So, I'm going to show you guys how the 3 or 4 basic MIG welding operations that are done for auto body repair, right? And it's sort of starting from the easiest and getting more difficult as we go along. Actually, this is probably the most difficult one, but anyways. So this one here is called a lap weld, and basically what it is 2 pieces of metal overlapping each other, thus why it's called the lap weld. That's the first one that we're going to do, and I'll show you how to do that afterwards. This one is a butt weld, but it has a backing plate in the back. So this is commonly used, commonly used for rocker panels and quarter sail panels and things like that, where the manufacturer calls to overlap the 2 panels. This is a butt weld with a backer. Each one of these is a structural repair method. So this one is the 2 pieces are butt together. And it has a backing plate of like material behind it, and you weld all 3 pieces of metal together. The MIG welds that I showed you guys in the other video were just welding on top of a piece of sheet metal, which is not done at all. It's just for testing the welder out, and that's it, right? If you're actually fixing a car, you're joining 2 pieces together. So these are the different methods for joining 2 pieces together, right? So the lap weld is done right on top of each other as close as possible, touching. You want to tack weld the joint every 2 or 3 inches or so far. And these ones are tack welded on the end to hold it for the test coupon. We call these little 2x3s coupons. We always weld them 3 inches long, 2 inches for the width. And they're just big enough that you can do a proper weld without having heat issues. So the root gap that we use just for testing, again, if you're doing it with the manufacturer, they'll give you a specific measurement. But we do it where the gap is the thickness of 3 pieces of metal or 3 coupons, right? So that's the gap in between. This way the weld can get down into the bottom piece and grab onto the 2 above in a single pass, right? So that's the gap for that one. These are all on 20 gauge sheet metal. Each piece of metal is about 1 millimeter. They're actually 0.9 millimeters thick for 20 gauge sheet metal. And then this one here is an open butt weld. So it's just 2 pieces stuck together like this, and you would weld it across. This is probably the most common collision seam now. For quarter panels, rocker panels, and even some frame rails are open butt welded now. And the root gap for this one is less than a sheet of metal. It's actually the thickness of a piece of the MIG welding wire, which is this. The wire for 20 gauge is 023, which is 0.6 millimeters, and that fits in that gap, right? Okay, so that's an open butt, very difficult one to do continuous and get penetration all the way across without blowing holes and so on and so forth. We'll see how I do. I'm just going to weld these all one try, one setting on the welder, and see how I do. This is another method of doing a butt weld. So this is a longer butt weld, tack welded together, and it's called this skip stitch technique, and it's to control the heat so you don't warp the panel. Some sail panels sectioning points are very, very long, and you have to do it in the stitch method. And this way it doesn't overheat the panel and warp it. And then the last one is the plug weld. So this is just 2 pieces stuck on top of each other. We usually do this on 2x2s. I just had some bigger pieces. These welds that we use are 8 millimeter plug welds, or 8 millimeter hole. And you want I think it's a 4 to 5 millimeter tear out on the backside, right? So there should be a little knob of penetration showing through. These are used wherever the spot welder, the compression spot welder, can't reach on the car. We do it with MIG welders, or with MIG welds. In level 2, and you'll learn some other welding techniques on galvanized coated metal to simulate weld-through primer. You're going to see the silicon bronze, the slot weld, and so on and so forth. And then level 3, you're going to see the aluminum weld. Okay, so lap weld, butt with backer, continuous butt weld, butt stitch with the skip stitch heat control technique, and then the plug weld, which replaces the spot welds where the spot welder can't reach. So now I'm going to tape my phone into my welding mask, and you can watch me try to weld these coupons together. We'll see how it goes.